Ugh. I don't understand why so many students are afraid of the second conditional. It's not difficult. Let's have a look. This is your complete guide to the English conditionals. I'm Greg, and in this series I'm teaching you how to use the 0, first, second, third, mixed and advanced conditionals. Whew. By the end of this series you are going to be a conditionals expert. Okay, I'm going to teach you the structure of the second conditional. I'm going to then teach you when we use it. We're going to compare it to the first conditional and then look at how to use it in questions and negatives before I tell you some very common mistakes that students make, which I don't want you to make too. So stay until the end of the video. Right, if you've watched my other videos on conditionals or if clauses, you will know that each conditional has two parts of the sentence. One part starts with the word if and it describes a condition, and the second part describes the result if that condition is true. So the structure of the second conditional in English is if plus the past simple, and the other part of the sentence uses would plus the verb. The order of these two parts is not important. You can change the order without any problem. And this is what it looks like. If I had a lot of money, if I had, that is the past simple. I would buy a boat. That is the would verb structure. If I knew the answer, past simple, I would tell you. Would tell. If they didn't have children, past simple, they would travel a lot more. They would travel. Okay, so that is the structure, but when do we use it? Well, if you've seen my other conditionals videos, you will remember that we use the 0 conditional when the result always happens, like it's a scientific fact. We use the first conditional when the result will probably happen, and we use the second conditional when the result is almost impossible. So, possible, but very, very, very improbable. So things like, if I had a lot of money, well, I don't have a lot of money. It's possible, but improbable. So we use this past simple tense. If I won the lottery, again, possible, but almost impossible, so past simple. If I met David Beckham, well, it could happen, but it probably won't. So we use this past simple to describe this almost impossible condition. And we also use this when things are absolutely impossible, but simply because they are not true. Like, if they didn't have children, they would travel more. If they didn't have children, they do have children. They have children. So if they didn't have children, that's just impossible. If I knew the answer, again, that is not true because I don't know the answer. If I knew the answer, I would tell you. A common way of giving someone advice is by saying, if I were you, if I were you. Again, I'm not you. I'm me. It's impossible that I am you. So we use this second conditional and we put that condition in the past simple tense. And the result is the verb with would. I would buy a boat. I would tell you the answer. Okay, now just for 1 minute, let's compare this to the first conditional, just so you can really see the difference. Compare these two sentences. If I have a lot of money, I will buy a boat. That's the first conditional, and if I say that, I'm implying that it's very likely and very probable that one day soon I will have a lot of money. If I have a lot of money, I will buy a boat. However, if I say, if I had a lot of money, I would buy a boat, here I'm implying that it's almost impossible that I have a lot of money and almost a dream that one day I will buy a boat. Now, many students use this correctly, but when they want to use it in questions or negatives, they go a bit So let's have a look at how we use this second conditional first in negatives. It's really not too complicated. We can make both parts of the sentence a negative. For example, if he didn't have a job, he wouldn't have any money. All we're doing is we're putting both parts in the negative, and when we're speaking, we always use the contractions. So not if he did not have a job, did not becomes didn't, and would not becomes wouldn't. He wouldn't have any money. So we can put both parts in the negative or just one part of the sentence in the negative like this. If they didn't have children, they would travel more. Or, if they had children, they wouldn't travel so much. Fairly simple. You just need to remember to use didn't in the condition and wouldn't for the result. As for questions, well, we put the would part of the sentence, we make that into a question, and we usually start the sentence with that part. Like this. Would you be able to survive financially if you didn't have a job? Would you be able to survive if you didn't have a job? What would you do? What would you do? That's the question. What would you do? That's the question. That's what we start with. What would you do if, and the rest of the sentence is the same. What would you do if you didn't have kids? What would you do if I wasn't here? What would you do if I sang out of tune? Beatles. Would it be okay if I arrived late to work? Would it be okay if I arrived late to work? So, fairly simple. You start the sentence with would, and the second part of the sentence is if, and the past simple. Right, common question time. My word, so many people ask me, what is correct? If I was you, or if I were you? If I was, if I were. Which one is correct? And here's the answer. Officially, if I were is correct. But to be honest, I prefer teaching you how real English people speak most of the time. And that is if I was. Both are really acceptable nowadays in spoken English. However, if you are writing, then we should use if I were. And okay, if you want to be super correct in a formal situation, maybe an exam, then you should perhaps use if I were. Interestingly, where I'm from, in the north of England, the pronunciation when we're speaking quickly of this is w. And the pronunciation of this when we're speaking quickly is w. So I would pronounce this if I were rich, and I would pronounce this if I were rich. If I were rich. So really, in spoken English, it's not really important. Okay, what are the common mistakes that students like you make with the second conditional? No. What are the common mistakes that everybody, including native speakers, make with the second conditional? Well, a really common mistake is using the word would with the if part of the sentence. So instead of saying if I knew the answer, some people say incorrectly, if I would know the answer, I would tell you. Listen, we can never use the word will twice in a sentence. We can never use the word would twice in a conditional sentence like this. If you say, if I would it's wrong. Always. Whether you're a native speaker or not, it's wrong. If I would be able to fly, I would fly to the moon. No. Just no. I told you in my lesson on the first conditional that if I will makes me ill. A nice little expression that one of my students told me. If I will This is always wrong. Ugh, it makes me ill. Don't say that. Well, she's got another expression for you today. If I would is no good. If you say if I would, it will always be wrong. So don't make that common mistake. And hey, if you want to learn more common mistakes that almost all students make in English, get my book up there. It's free and I teach you all the most common mistakes that students make so that you never make them again. Remember, this is one video of a 6-video series on the conditionals in English. Click there to watch the other videos and learn more conditionals. And I'll see you there. Thanks for watching and bye for now.